Bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
The CINIKRADIO podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio podcast. Here your host, Cinik.
Hey, the facts are Spider-Man belongs in the MCU. Sony was delusional thinking they didn't need Marvel, and now he's back. And we, the fans, are 100% proudly responsible for that.
Igrihe.
As long as DC wants to make dark and gritty movies, they're going to lag behind Marvel in every category.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
IG, did we just forget Kim?
You guys completely suck.
This is the greatest show of all time.
And you are listening to episode 141 of the Cinik Radio podcast, and I'm your host, Cinik. And joining me, as always, two guys that feel like we've finally made America great again, Igrihe and Ryan. And on this week's show, we are breaking down Chapter 10 of The Mandalorian entitled The Passenger, a little in the aftermath of the election, and all this, and it starts now. Sorry. The episode starts with Djarin and the child headed back to the ship, cruising along on their speeder bike after slaying the dragon last week, when they are ambushed by bounty hunters. IG, it was a pretty epic crash. Do you think maybe it's time that he invests in a children's car seat for the child? Were you less than surprised in true Sons of Anarchy fashion that everybody was perfectly fine after taking a header off a motorbike at high speeds?
You know, that's the thing. Like, he puts him in a sack. It'd be like, you know, I'm going to start riding my Harley around and put a baby and a baby Bjorn on my chest and go riding around. That's perfectly okay. I mean, he's got some armor at least. Maybe it's actually like shock resistance because he gets shot and hit and everything else. He never seems to get a concussion, except for last season right at the end. But yeah, he seems to do just fine. But no, Baby Yoda, just riding a sack on the side, you'll be fine. Man, that was an epic crash, too. Like, just parts scattered all over the place. It was kind of cool to watch, actually. But, you know, it kind of reminded me of that Walking Dead episode where they drug the line across all the walkers and everything because they're too stupid to get out of the way. It's like, if you're this good of a bounty hunter, wouldn't you know, don't ride between things like that where you don't know if there's a bad guy?
Or maybe fly over the line. Or, I mean, at least the Ewoks went high and didn't take the biker scouts out at the bike. It was always at the neck, so it was quick and it was clean. Ryan, the hunters had a great opening move. We can't deny it. But much like the underwear gnomes from South Park, they're missing a crucial step. What happens if we don't disable the hunter? What more could they have done to kind of help their cause? And do you think that was one of the better hand-to-hand contests in the entire run of the show?
It's like he's still fairly inexperienced. Like, you wonder, like, you know, how long was he an apprentice before, like, his master or his, like, you know, trainer died? Because, like, he often gets himself into situations which you'd think's an experienced bounty hunter who's clearly as kind of skilled and talented as he is would not, you know, get into, but he's kind of constantly screwing things up, or just getting into situations that you should have anticipated. But, you know, I guess that also goes along with, you know, part of what makes the show work is that, you know, he's still, like, at the end of the day, there are people throughout the galaxy looking for him. And so there is this kind of constant anxiety and feeling of him having to, you know, constantly be on the move, and that you never know who's going to be after you. So I guess in that way, like if I had a galaxy after me, it's kind of hard to anticipate everybody's move. But, you know, clearly his hand-to-hand skills and his kind of ability to adapt to situations is incredible. And you almost, if you have a team set out to go after him, you have to have somebody who's up to the task, you know, one-on-one, you know, to face him, or you have to have some kind of an attack that you know, immobilizes him immediately. But, you know, just a rope on a speeder is not going to work because clearly he's able to, you know, adjust and adapt to situations.
I mean, the Devorian last season gave him everything that his money was for, but then he comes out with something clever and just takes him out at the knees. Strategy-wise, he seems like a bit of a novice sometimes, but combat-wise, he's right up there with anything that we've ever seen in the Star Wars universe, and I actually kind of would like to see him fight a Jedi and see how well he would do. IG, sometimes you go back to that well once too often. In her previous two appearances, Amy Sedaris was funny, charming, and even stole the scene. This time around, did she rub you the wrong way? I mean, did maybe just a little bit too much of a good thing?
I think, like, when they were still in the cantina, I was still fine with it. It was going fine. But when she was introducing the passenger, and speaking the passenger's language with just kind of breathing inward, making goofy noises, that kind of pushed on me a little bit. So in a series where I've only had little minor things to complain about at all, that's kind of up there among the minor things. It wasn't super long and drawn out and everything, and so that's why I can probably get past it. But yeah, I've kind of had my run of that kind of stuff. Like, it's fine if she's there and he interacts with her and stuff, but like, she's the one that speaks the same languages, but Djarin, who's been all over the galaxy and done all kinds of stuff and is really, really well traveled, has no idea. He speaks Tuscan, but doesn't know anything about what that lady's speaking.
Because I'm a geek and I host a show and I read way too much of this stuff, I know the director of this episode was none other than Peyton Reed. Who is he, you ask? Well, he's the director of the Ant-Man movies for Marvel. But having Dr. Mandible, the giant ant, and then the frog lady in back-to-back scenes, was that a bit of alien overkill? I
thought Dr. Mandible was a little alien overkill, and not even alien overkill. It was a little too on the nose. I didn't mind it that much, but I maybe because I didn't consider that like Amy Sedaris at this point was a little, almost like too much of a good thing. But I do think maybe the combination of her kind of, scene shoery combined with, a clear ant, plus with speaking the language, like I think all of that, combined was a little much in the beginning. I never really considered it, but I definitely felt, there's a bit of me that was a little, just like, okay, I get it, and this is coming from someone who I really enjoyed the episode, but I think, I think in hindsight, maybe it was a little too much, but I feel like it was so little of a part of the episode, and I also really enjoyed actually the frog, or I what I would say is a crested gecko, because as somebody who has a crested gecko, I immediately was like, oh my god, whoever designed that character, it was clearly designed after crested gecko, and so I love the design just as somebody who loves crested geckos. Yeah, so in that way, it wasn't really alien overkill because I kind of like that alien, and I like the kind of story, and I like the the stuff with the eggs. But yeah, definitely a little much at that point.
For me, Dr. Mandible was the only thing that we've seen on The Mandalorian so far that was completely, it looked like a puppet, or it looks CGI to me. It didn't look real. It kind of took me out of the scene, but there was some great Easter eggs throughout the course of that, even just that scene. First off, the droid from Jabba's palace, K-99, was tending bar. And I think that might have been Mark Hamill's voice. They were in Mos Eisley, which is a huge epicenter for the Star Wars universe. And Paleomoto was not only playing Sabak, which is how Han Solo won the Millennium Falcon to begin with. If you know anything about Star Wars lore, she was also sitting in his seat. So, IG, out of all those, what was your favorite Easter egg as far as the episode went?
Well, you can go with that, or you can go with the things inside the bar that they make drinks out of it and everything, made out of the IG heads and everything, because those are still there. You're right that we didn't hear him speak, but the bartender, when Mando spoke to him last time he was in Mos Eisley, was Mark Hamill's voice. There's just so many things, and even all this, like in his previous visit to the cantina, Dr. Mandible was in the cantina. If you go back and watch that episode, he was there in that time. It's just, there's almost too much. And, anytime they end up in Mos Eisley or somewhere on Tatooine that is recognizable from previous encounters and movies and things like that, I just get excited. It still works on me. So the fact that he was back in Mos Eisley Cantina and they were in the alcove where Han roasted himself a Rodian, I just loved it, and it worked great. So I guess my favorite would have to be being in the alcove where Han shot Greedo.
Yeah, we had the off-brand bounty hunter sitting in the same spot last season with his foot up like Han. So I thought that was kind of cool that we went back there. I mean, they could spend the entirety of the show on Tatooine, and I would be just as happy. The side quest of the week brings us the frog lady, and she's got to get to Trask, and there's no hyperspace or it will kill her eggs. So sublight we use and do not pass go and collect 200 credits. We get a good look at the current timeline of politics as two X-Wings pull in next to our heroes and ask for ID. So Ryan, we get to the point of the show where we ask you the most uncomfortable question that I can think of. If you're Mando in that moment when these X-Wings come right up next to you and you can't outrun them and you can't outgun them, is it time to go to light speed?
Probably, I think you saw, as things progressed that he was willing to kind of give up on the mission, anyway. So yeah, I think at that point, if you can go to light speed and, assuming they don't have the technology to follow them, I think that's a few years or a few years out or decades out. He probably should have done that. Yeah, just that whole side mission logically didn't make too much sense when you could outrun them that way. So yeah, I guess that would be my answer to your question.
So you would kill off the species for the convenience of getting away? I got you, Ryan. It's fine.
I mean, yeah, when you consider like you've got two X-Wings who definitely have no qualms about blowing shit up. I mean, we saw that, last season, in probably my favorite episode of the season, they'll shoot first and ask questions later. And Dave Filoni was there. So clearly he's ready and able to do it. So, it's like, I don't think, and you're not going to outrun them. You're not going to outgun them. Didn't really make sense, flying onto that planet. None of that made sense because it's basically a suicide mission. So, I mean, one way or another, the species isn't making it, but then, you still got him and the child to think about. So,
yeah, I agree, because you may sacrifice overall your grand mission or the main mission for this side quest. I think I would have jumped into hyperspace too. IG, being the one with the most experience with kids, you've had many bites at this apple. Is the depiction of the child accurate in the sense that at that age, everything is food? They never listen and they won't stay in the house?
It's so accurate. I mean, I think you spend the first few years of life just trying to figure out, what do you have in your mouth now? And taking it away and be like, and making noises like, in hopes that they'll drop it, spit it out, or at least not choke on it. Because they will literally eat just about anything. And those eggs must have tasted great because, man, I'm telling you, he wanted nothing but to eat every single last one of them.
They crashed trying to dodge the New Republic ships that were in pursuit. Not since the Millennium Falcon have we seen a ship so abused in the Star Wars universe. Do you think maybe it's time for Mando to trade up to, past the Razor Crest to a newer, nicer, faster ship?
Yeah, probably. It's like it doesn't have anything going for it that, like Millennium Falcon's like, okay, it's the fastest ship in the galaxy. Clearly has gotten our heroes out of trouble, where I can't think of a situation where the Razor Crest has proven to be, invaluable. So might want to think about that.
It has a portable carbon freezing chamber.
Fair enough. And the only toilet that we've seen in the Star Wars universe, but that's
2 for 2. Yeah. I don't know how much better you get than that.
Yeah. Yeah, probably put that in I feel like the portable carbon freezing chamber can be put into any other ship. But yeah, you might want to think about it. Although for what it's worth, it definitely repairs really easily. Like it seems like it could go through everything, as we've seen, and one guy can repair it overnight, or or one or two guys can repair it with a training montage. So in that way, I've never seen something kind of as durable.
You literally could fix it with that Flex Seal that they show in the commercials. Yeah. I mean, the only thing that they ever said about it wasn't that one episode that you said that it was your favorite, that it was so old that it's not on anybody's records. Exactly. So they're flying around in basically an unregistered antique. IG, of course there had to be spiders in the cave. I mean, the eggs begin to hatch, the room begin to fill with every size arachnid possible. Were you deep down thinking that our heroes, or at least somebody in the party, could have became lunch? And what did you feel about the special effects? Did it rise to the moment? Did it raise the tension for you?
Yeah, I'm not really an arachnophobe, but that scene kind of really started creeping me out a little bit. Because not only were they arachnids, but they were more like our standard arachnids. They had webbing and they could shoot it and they could do all kinds of things. And maybe what we needed was for him to get bitten and he could gain some extra powers, and that would help him realize other stuff is happening. Oh, that's a separate universe. Never mind.
Into the Mandoverse.
Disney. Anyway, the CGI on those space spiders or cave spiders or whatever you want to call them was done really well. They were clean. They were really something to look at. And I really was getting a lot of Alien vibes, though, before they came out, with how the eggs were all laid out and how they hatched and everything else. That kind of, and Alien to me is about as creepy as space horror kind of gets. So yeah, it started to work on me pretty quickly.
I mean, anything that's done on a snow planet in the dark is kind of terrifying. And then these spider bits come down from everywhere. It reminded me of a dungeon in World of Warcraft. I really got into the moment. The tension got up as they were running from them, and they're just piling into the ship and trying to pile through the door. And it creeped me out. I mean, it was one of the few redeeming things in the episode that kind of saved me, at least saved the episode for me. What do you think, Ryan?
No, that worked for me. It was unexpected. I think, I really love the music in that section where, the whole part where he's like, the child is kind of excited about the eggs, and then Mando scolds him like a child. He walks away. He kind of, then he eats the one spider, and then all of a sudden it turns. And I think they did a great job of kind of building the tension there for a moment. Obviously, like we know that, Mando and we know the child are not going to die, but I actually thought that maybe the frog lady was toast at that point, even though intellectually they're not going to go. Like, there was this really great, they did a great job of building tension and that kind of impending danger and doom for them, and that whole sequence of them chasing was genuinely scary and works as like just straight up horror. I did feel like throughout that whole time I was like on the edge of my seat, like really afraid for them. And then the CGI is great. I mean, the CGI in this just the work they've done, there are no moments where I'm like taken out of it. Like, everything looks great. This is not an exception. So it looked awesome. It really did a great job building the tension. And I was like, I guess, again, genuinely afraid for their safety.
IG, in an odd turn of events, the X-Wing pilots find our heroes outnumbered and basically on the verge of catastrophe, and they save the day. They help shoot the spiders off. They tell Mando, listen, we're cool, but make sure you get your transponder working. But we're not going to help you, and we're going to potentially leave you here to freeze to death. Your thoughts on the final scene in the episode?
Well, Dave Filoni and the other guy who's played by Paul Sun-Hyung Lee, who has a series you can watch on Netflix called Kim's Convenience. He's hilarious in it, a Korean man owning a grocery store in Canada. I liked seeing them both there. I liked seeing that they showed up and did that, and then realized, all right, we know that this ship was also at this other place that kind of kept one of our guys alive and turned some guys in. So we're not going to bring you in. We're not going to kill you here. We're going to give you a pass. And the fact that he still got that hunk of junk into space and is turtling along to wherever he's going, that's just amazing. And, I really like the episode. But this is probably, for me, the weakest episode of the series thus far. It was really just a filler episode. There wasn't much going on. I'm hoping that this, in the grand story, actually means something and moves us towards something, like it was really important. Because as of right now, it just seemed like it was a good way to kill some time to get there. It was still impressive. The effects were really well done. The acting was good as always. Amy Sedaris could have been a little bit, maybe less, and it would have probably been a little higher score. But I still enjoyed it. It was still a lot of fun. I've still already watched it 3 times. And I think I'm going to give it an 8.5.
Yeah, so this is actually one of my favorite episodes. And that's kind of it's tough to say, because I think all the episodes are great, or almost all of them are great, but I really, really enjoyed it. I think one of the things I like about the show, one of the great things about the show, especially compared to a lot of the genre TV, is that, a lot of times, it can go on its own. You can go on your own adventures without kind of being tied down to like an overall narrative, which is something that we get with a lot of shows. So all the time, like with whatever the show, we're kind of forced into whatever the narrative is, because there is an overarching storyline that we have to follow, and they get really detailed. There's a lot to follow, a lot of characters, a lot of things going on. And so everything that happens in every scene in a lot of the shows we watch now seem to be geared towards whatever that overarching narrative is. And I think this show, yes, it does kind of have it, but it can take a couple episodes off from even thinking about it. And that's what I like about the show, and what I like about this episode, because this is an episode that if you did have a show that was purely focused on that one narrative, you can't have an episode like this, because it does kind of stand alone. I mean, yes, they still have to get to the planet, and reunite the Frog Lady. So I'm sure we'll still get a little bit more Frog Lady. But what I like loved about this episode is it really felt there were stakes. We even talked about it last week that, some of the challenge for the show is, you want to feature Baby Yoda because he's such a cute and funny character, but it doesn't want to be overkill. And you want to make one of the things that worked last season was the child always being in danger and feeling that kind of sense of, is he going to get out of it? Is he going to be kidnapped or whatever? And this episode really had that again early on. The kind of cold open had that, which worked really, really great and was a great way to open the show, an episode. And then the moment with the spiders really, really works for me. So I think that, and also like it did feature him a little bit more. The cuteness factor was there. The stuff with the eggs was cute. So I really, really enjoyed the episode as a standalone thing. And again, more than anything, it got me, it really got me feeling danger and fear for their safety. And so it really works on that level for me. So yeah, is it the most narrative heavy story? No, not very plot heavy, pretty straightforward. But what it does, I think it did really, really well. So I would give this episode a 9.
Wow. Okay. The Passenger, to me, was probably my second least favorite episode out of the 10 so far. When you're only going to give us 8 a season, and they're varying from, an hour to a half hour down, I think that we need to make the most at every single time. And as much as I don't mind these side quests, a lot of the choices confused me from the jump. I thought it was very thin. I love the callbacks, even the spiders, but it needs to be more than that to kind of keep me engaged. It's Star Wars, so I'm always going to love it. And I did get a little bit of dark humor out of watching the child suck down an endangered species like I do deviled eggs on Thanksgiving. They did a great job ramping up the tension. The spiders were cool. They were scary. I loved seeing the X-Wings. But there just wasn't enough meat on the bones for me. So I'm going to go ahead and give the episode a 6.5. And lastly, this week, I just want to send a huge thank you to everybody that tuned back into the show after a long 6-month hiatus. I missed you guys. I missed expressing my opinion. I missed discussing and breaking down shows that I loved. I was just going through a transition in my life, and there was really a lack of content during that time. Most of all, I want to thank the people that took the time to send me well wishes and congratulations for having the show back. And I get to sit down every week with 2 of my most favorite people in the world and talk about the things that I love and have a good time and try to make people laugh. And nothing does my heart better than that. And as a citizen of this great country, I feel like a weight has been lifted off of all our chests, and hopefully the healing can start again. And hopefully we can start being a little less ugly every day to each other online. I'm proud of this country for turning out and mailing in record number of votes, all with very little nonsense. Every vote was counted because that's the way it's supposed to be. Every vote matters. Democracy is important, my friends. No matter what color you bleed politically, we aren't defined by who we vote for, but how we treat each other. Choose empathy, my friends. Always choose empathy. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CINIKRADIO.com. Available for download on iTunes.